Small businesses have some big complaints these days. This morning, we're going across the nation to hear them in a few minutes. The White House will respond. Rick Shindell is business owner of Zyn Systems in Seattle, Zyn, a tech consulting firm. Heidi Jacobus, chairman, CEO, and owner of Zyn Systems Corporation in Ann Arbor, a robotics manufacturer. And Michael Fleischer, president of Bogen Communications in Ramsey, New Jersey, is here with us at the New York Stock Exchange. So I will begin with Michael. I guess the best way to get going here, Michael, is to ask you, are you hiring? And if not, why not?
I'm not hiring, and I'm not hiring for one main reason. The policies that are being pursued by the people in Washington are changing the risk-reward relationship unfavorably to taking on additional risk, additional obligations in hiring people. And until that risk-reward relationship becomes more favorable, it's unwise to hire.
What if business picks up and you need to hire?
For a while, we will try to do without and be inventive and be more productive. And when things settle down and it looks like it's a sensible thing to take on the obligations of hiring someone, the long-term commitment to a job, and the tax wedge, the amount that you pay for an employee over and above what the employee actually gets in terms of take-home pay and benefits. As that tax wedge gets bigger and bigger, as it must, the cost to the company, the risk to the company goes up because we do not control it. That's in the control of the government. And as the government has to extract more tax revenue, that wedge gets bigger and bigger, and we can't take that risk.
Heidi, what about you?
We are hiring. We just hired 2 people last week, but we're in a unique situation where we have government contracts that are long-term, and we continually apply for and get awarded competitively more contracts, but the rate of contracting has been going down. The acquisition system has very much slowed, so we're not hiring as much as we could be.
How many people do you employ in all, Heidi, at the moment?
We have 55 people.
Right. Rick, what's your position? How do you see the economy? Are you hiring?
Well, basically, no, I'm not hiring. We're a very small business where Heidi is in that margin of what I call a tweener, being between a very small business and a moderately sized small business. We are a very small business, but probably of most interest to you and your viewers be the fact that we are also small business advocates. And so we basically hear from hundreds of small businesses in high tech throughout the country. And I can tell you they're not hiring because who is the biggest customer that high-tech small businesses can have? It's generally the federal government. And the federal government is in such a state of flux right now. Congress can't pass budgets that allow the agencies to go ahead and know how much they have to spend in the next fiscal year, and it creates this cycle of what we call very short hops of procurement.
All right, stand by. Our Small Business Summit will roll on as soon as we have a commercial break and pay for big business.
Sorry, do carry on. I'm
Plus,
totally
the
sorry.
White House, thank you very much. The White House responds. We're back over here. See if the head of the Small Business Administration can address their concerns. Conversation continues now. Just move your lips, Simon, while I talk. That way they'll never know the difference. Rick Shindell, owner of Zyn Systems. Heidi Jacobus, chairman, CEO, and owner of Zyn Systems, which sounds very Terminator-ish to me. And Michael Fleischer, president of Bogen Communications. Michael, I want to start back with you. Essentially what you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the employment cost index, correct? You're talking about, when you talk about that wedge, that is measured by, as far as I know, the employment cost index.
I'll take your word for it. I haven't heard of that.
And that has been steadily rising. Just been steadily rising. But I believe, and hopefully you can shed some light on it, some years ago, the growth shifted to not the tax burden, but the health care burden. Are you finding that?
Yes, that's absolutely true. And the acceleration in the health burden sped up, at least in my company's experience, after healthcare got reformed. We had been able to hold healthcare increases to 10% for the last few years. This year, it's going up 28%.
But that's coincidental, isn't it? That's just because your healthcare provider has decided to jack up your rates. That's got nothing to do with necessarily with Obama's reforms from reading the article that you wrote.
I think it's a fair inference that at least part of that is, in effect, a regulatory and tax-driven increase in response to Obamacare.
A preemptive strike, if you will.
Well, there are changes that the insurance companies actually have now that they do have to pay for starting immediately.
Heidi, we didn't get your view. I know that you said earlier on that you were very tied to public contracts, public sector contracts. Just elaborate.
No, Department of Defense contracting.
Department of Defense contracting. Just talk us through how you see the role of government then at the moment, and in order to generate jobs and growth in your area of America. What would you like to say to the administration?
I would like to say that the acquisition system, as I see it, and I've been in business 20 years doing government contracting. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Haynes, I predate the Terminator. Cybernet's 20 years old, and the Terminator's 19. But I would like the acquisition system to be speeded up. Right now, it's very common that large acquisitions that we spend a lot of time bidding and preparing, staffing and getting ready, hoping to win that contract after 18 months' time, still are not funded. Sometimes they're just canceled. There was a very large one just yesterday that was canceled after 6 or 9 months. Gigantic effort on a lot of companies' part, and mine included, called the Ground Combat Vehicle. So that's disconcerting. That wastes our time and it saps our energy.
And Rick, what would you like to say to the administration on behalf of America's business community?
Well, on behalf of the small business community, we have to kind of combine the administration along with Congress, because Congress is really the engine that makes some of the administration's wishes happen. Now, the greatest small business champion of all time, Milt Stewart, who created the SBA's Chief Counsel for Advocacy, once said, his statement was, Congress, when it comes to small businesses, in public they'll hug them, in private they'll mug him. And this is exactly what happens and has happened. Look at the SBA. They've come back a little bit in the last couple of years. Prior to this, they were decreased in their allotments for 7 years in a row. And even during Small Business Week, about 4 years ago, while all these congressmen are up there saying, we care about small businesses, they were cutting on that very week the SBA's budget.
Sir, I am shocked that you find the congressman saying one thing and doing another. That is scurrilous attack, sir, which up with which I will not put. Now that you've heard from our esteemed small business owners, let's get some reaction from the Small Business Administration. Joining us is Karen Mills, the U.S. SBA Administrator. Ms. Mills, welcome. Thank you very much for being with us.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Topic number one, I believe, at least with my guest here in the studio, is the cost of health care and its component of the Employment Cost Index. What can you tell them?
Well, first of all, I travel all around the country talking about these issues and hearing what small businesses need now so that they can grow and create jobs. Right now, one of the most important things that's happened for small businesses in healthcare is that this year there's a tax credit, and we are going to be able to provide almost $2 billion into the hands of small businesses. About 4 million small businesses will qualify. So what we're seeing is that small businesses are now able to have a more affordable avenue into health care. And this is going to improve even more in 2014 when the exchanges start up.
I'm sorry. When you speak of this tax credit, is this a tax credit on the healthcare side of the ledger or a tax credit for companies that hire, which was part of the stimulus package? What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the tax credit for providing health care.
Okay, all right.
Right now, 4 million of the 6 million small businesses are eligible, and they're finding that they're going to get money back in their pockets in 2010. The hiring tax credit also exists, and what's interesting is that there's been a series of tax credits that came in the Recovery Act. and more that are in the Small Business Jobs Bill, which is right now awaiting approval in the Senate as soon as they come back. And these are very important to small businesses because it means cash today so that they can have more profit and more to invest in hiring the next person.
Karen Mills, what about the other concerns that you've heard here from our small business people who are obviously at this stage reluctant to hire, to a man and woman on the TV screen at the moment?
Small businesses absolutely need more help right now. We know that small businesses hire about half of the people who work in this country, and they are really the engine that's going to lead us out of the recession. But it's been bumpy. They need the Small Business Jobs Bill to put some wind at their back, and that's why they need more access to credit, they need more tax credits, and we're going to provide that help.
Rick, would you like to, what do you make of what you're hearing from Karen Mills? Does that address the concerns that you have?
Many of them, yes. What's really interesting on the health care bill, though, and from what I hear, actually from physicians that are primary care physicians in business for themselves, this health care bill is hurting them. And again, going back to Congress, who sometimes you got to love them and other times Congress, in the health care bill, put a terribly burdensome IRS statutes into this. So every bill Congress ever does has a title, and then it says, and for other purposes. And in the health care bill, just the 1099 the IRS wants in this is terribly burdensome, not just to small businesses, but to large ones alike. It'll hurt all of us.
All right. Now, in television, about the best we can do is devote these few minutes and hope that we get somewhere. Thank you very much, all of you. Appreciate your input and your participation. It's shedding a little light on the subject.
Okay, stocks are trading sideways.